Me? Good morning.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, again, good morning. And it is early here uh, on Cape Cod. So I am excited to be here, obviously, to be asked to participate and 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 I hope that whatever I have to say, rambling along or whatever, that there might be some morsel of value. And so, what I had thought about, given that I am retired and have been retired since 2016, um, and so therefore I have not been actively pursuing science, uh, and but I have maintained my interests in following, in a very general and broad way, um, what is going on in the world around me. And so um, I did say that I would maybe just do some reflections in terms of my career. But I would like to, just say that this is very important, what is going on here. And, and today is Earth Day. The sun hasn't risen here yet, but in 1970, uh, some like-minded individuals came up with this concept, and knowing life, it's probably not new, wasn't new under the sun then, but someone coined it again or whatever, called Earth Day. And that was, at that time, I was still in the Army. I'd gotten drafted out of graduate school. I had, uh, you know, was in my pursuing my master's degree in fisheries science, uh, as part of the research cadre of the Oklahoma Cooperative Fishery Unit. And I had a dear friend who had been one of my, or who is one of my mentors, and his family had recently returned from Oklahoma to Massachusetts, to Falmouth, to Woods Hole, um, that he had left on a detail to help found the Oklahoma Cooperative Fishery Unit. And it was he who, Brad Brown, who recruited me to the Oklahoma State University Department of Zoology, where the fishery unit was being, it had been established because it had been in existence a year before I got there. And so then moving forward, pursuing that master's degree, I got snatched by the Army as a draftee during the Vietnam War. And I happened to be stationed in in, um, in Maryland at the Aberdeen Proving Ground Edgewater Arsenal um, component of that. And so my friends had invited me up to Massachusetts for a few days, and it happened to be at a time uh, of the first Earth Day. And so we, trekked around Falmouth, Cape Cod here, and then went over to Boston. And so I have fond memories of my first Earth Day, and and so wanted to say that. And then the other is in my, greetings, introduction, whatever. Um, I realized that, as always, for all of us, that you know um, we are part of a legacy. We are part of a movement, and so there are those who came before us. Some names we know, um, and are very, they're just at the tip of our tongue, so to say. Whether we're talking about George Washington Carver or whomever. But I also would like to say that we in that there are those that were more contemporary to my time, in the sense that while E. Just was before my time, and I stand on his legacy and shoulders here as a scientist, um, in Woods Hole, in the marine or ocean or aquatic sciences. But we want to remember too, I think, people like Dr. John Slaughter, who did so much to open doors through various avenues, whether it was the National Science Foundation, the National Academy of Sciences, you name it, uh, primarily engineer. And then there's Dr. Massey, Walter Massey, a physicist, and there was Dr. Jewel Palmer Cobbs, um, and all of these individuals I had the pleasure of meeting. Of course, Dr. Jewel, Jewel Palmer Cobbs was um, did she came to Woods Hole to do science, as well as Dr. Massey was here for various capacities as trust as a trustee uh, at the Oceanographic Institution, and then of course there's Dr. Shirley Malcolm, was at the AAA, um, uh, you know, American Association for the Advancement of Science. She's done so much to bring awareness to the place of Blacks in science, and particularly around policy and the importance of policy, and and uh, and and uh, and whether we participate as policymakers or we are the victims of policies that often have not worked in our favor. And it, and so, um, there was Roger Young also, who was here along with E. Just, looking back. And there's Dr. Shirley McVeigh, another. So I'm saying this to say that um, I am part of not only pursuing and part of that, those persons who were lucky enough to actually do science or to practice science, although nowhere near um, what I had envisioned with regards to the intensity of it. And part of that, I will say, had has to do with segregation, has to do with bias, discrimination, but it also has to do with my um, choosing to uh, pursue governmental science. When one works for the government, um, you aren't as free necessarily to just pursue science, say for science sake, or your interest in science or particular um, problem or question or hypotheses or unknown, but there are some constraints in terms of, of what you can do science on. And so my being in fisheries science, being part of the National Marine Fisheries Service, part of the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, meant that that came with some requirements in terms of meeting the obligations of the agency to pursue its mission and to produce. And so I want to shout out to Earth Day. Here we are with Earth Day, to those people who have helped to open doors for those of us who wanted to pursue our aspirations to as scientists. But I want to also say that before I just go on here and maybe return to myself, something about myself, and that is to say that um, thinking about what is going on today, and I do not want to get bogged down on that because I'm incensed, I'm livid about what is going on with regards, again, to putting up barriers to Blacks and other marginalized uh, and fully underappreciated individuals and citizens of this country being again under the yoke of discrimination, segregation in many ways, um, and so inequality. But I don't want to go off on that at this point. But suffice it to say, these are troubling times that we are living in, and they do not bode well for we as a people, that is, Black folks. It does not bode well for brown folks, um, our indigenous um, uh, fellow citizens and human beings, for Pacific Islanders, um, for women, and especially for women of ethnic the distinctions that are not white, or what we think of as white, or European, or in a sense. But nevertheless, so my question then has to do with uh, the policymakers. Um, you know, what will they look like now under this climate? Or we don't even know what all this means with this retraction and this backpedaling, or this closing the doors again, bolting the doors again, so to say, in terms of one being able to be recognized, or another recognizing another human being for their God-given phenotype. And I say that because when we look at color, we look at pigmentation, and from both ends of the spectrum, if you want to look at it that way, that there are some people with greater amounts of pigmentation than others, some with far less than others, and everything in between. And as living creatures who respond, you have a stimulus and a response. It is natural to recognize differences. And so it is immoral, let alone to say that one will be denied of using language that connotes differences. So, at any rate, I wonder what the policymakers under this kind of scheme or regime will look like, and how will they differ, uh, from the past, but or what we have moved into, or what they look like even moving into the current um, situation we find ourselves in. And so, will, or and not just will, but I think we are at a point where we will have to break the hold with the past and the current regime, where parents, educators, and policymakers need to move forward and address the educational deficiencies that continue to derail the science careers of Black students in American or the US system. And so when I think about my career and where I thought we were going, um, we were trying to get to um, with regards to um, the various intervention programs or strategies for increased participation in the sciences. And I say sciences broadly. And I know this is Blacks in Marine Science that we are part of this celebration. But I would say uh, we are concerned about the sciences. Uh, and of course, we certainly, um, are not suggesting to overlook the marine or ocean or aquatic sciences. Um, and so we, we were moving from, say, when I got, uh, I came along. I'm in my 80s now, and so looking back uh, at my trace, so to say, um, it's one that at some point in time I characterized it as coming of age during segregation, and when I was choosing my what I wanted to be or trying to identify, um, what I wanted to do. Um, when I was in undergraduate school, for example, starting back in 1961, the country was still segregated. It was still, while we had um, some, by the time I graduated in 65 with the degree in biology and a minor in chemistry, uh, I, the country was still segregated in the sense whether it was de jure or legal segregation or not, uh, it was still very much de facto segregated. And you'd had the 64, 63, 64, and then after that, I graduated to 68 civil rights laws that had been passed, which did change things. But they didn't necessarily change things in a hurry. And so, when I, was coming of age, so to say, uh, it was under conditions that were the policymakers still hadn't gotten very far from coming up with policies that crippled blacks, brown, and other people or people or non-whites. Um, and so, that we were now at a time when, there were little pockets of activity here and there within uh, the government to open the government, to desegregate the government. Same was at the state level or the municipal level when looking at governments, and the federal, of course, and then, but you had to look at what was going on in the um, educational system, and it was moving at a snail's pace still, you see, in terms of opening up. And um, and so I was one of the few lucky that whatever it was, serendipity, being at the right place at the right time, when someone was there to tell me what line to stand in, and having had at least, the preparation to be considered for that opportunity. Um, and that's often what happened, was being at the right place at the right time. I remember, you know, graduating from college, and back then we didn't have internet, or the technology that we have now. Some of us even still had limited access to telephones. But at that time, you hit the street, and you knocked on doors. You saw an ad in the paper, maybe, or in a magazine, or someone passed on some, verbal or oral um, information about the potential for a job, and it might fit your credentials. So that's what it was like. And so I did those kinds of things. I, you know, went to Washington, D.C. since I was from Annapolis, Maryland, and and went to school in Maryland. And my dad, took me over there and waited for me while I went to NIH or wherever to knock on the door to see if there were any jobs open. And 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 there was an individual there, for example, who wanted to hire me, but he did not have the absolute authority to do it. So therefore, the person that he relied on, um, via his recommendations, turned me down. I then went to the Smithsonian, and there was a job that I could have taken. Um, However, I wasn't sure that, given how hot it was, and the building was not air conditioned. And I don't know so much that I was thinking of air conditioning at that time, or it was just something about it. Um, and it was in an open bay, so to say, and it was a desk here, a desk there, and people peering through a microscope. And it was sorting plankton was part of it. And when I look back on it now, on this old head that a young head wouldn't have had then, I think what I possibly was reacting to was were the stares, the hostile looks, because there was no one there that looked like me in that room. And I said to my dad, I don't think I want to peer down a microscope all day and da 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 da. So I end up, he called my uncle, his brother in Philadelphia, went up there, and in a couple of days, I had a couple of job offers, and it was both were in using my chemistry background, and I took the one at Public Industries. The other was there associated with Drexel University. It was industrial chemistry as well. But the point is also is that um, I uh, had minored in chemistry, but at my institution, I was only one um, course or area of chemistry from having a major, so I would have had a double major, biology and chemistry. And so I took the job at as a industrial chemist at Public Industries, 1429 Walnut Street. And so there again, I was able to, um, get that job, so to say, uh, by people investing in me, my uncle, my dad, my parents, my family, my my teachers, who believed in me and had encouraged me. And so a little bit about that too is my dad's sisters were teachers, and as a matter of fact, Molly was my fifth grade teacher when I lived in North Carolina, and so uh, back then, you had to have a safety net. They thought, and so it was, well, boy, you better get that teacher certificate because that's a pretty safe bet. You can, have a job, but I decided that I just wanted to do straight science. I didn't want to use my hours that I could use for courses in science for teacher training and then have to go out those X number of 3 months, I think it was, for practice teaching and what have you. So anyway, I went straight science, and so I was taking a chance. It was risky as far as my family and others were concerned, but I did it, and I loved science, and I loved, for me, the background, preparation, and what have you. Maryland State College, now the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, that has a baccalaureate, master's, and PhD in marine sciences, um, was the right place for me. The size of it was extremely important for me, and the credentials of the the professorial staff, or uh, component, the faculty was was second to none as far as I was concerned, and their dedication to the students made a world of difference. And from the very beginning, I was fortunate enough again to get a little research assistantship in the biology department, and that, while it may have looked like doing a bunch of grunt work, um, that is in prepping for the various laboratories, for the various courses taught, or helping with papers or whatever. But some of the key things that came out of it, and in addition to the importance of just being in that environment and being a gopher or whatever, was the fact that I got to participate in ongoing research. Dr. Lewis Austin, who was the chair of the department, was a microbiologist. And so everything from what may seem simple in having to learn the technique of preparing agar or the instruments that are used to um, populate or to create a culture in a petri dish or whatever, to handling, managing an autoclave and the importance of time and precision. It was all extremely important. And then Dr. Maren Richard Miles, who was a genius. She was just brilliant. Had, gone through, I think it was Girls High in Philadelphia, and then the University of Pennsylvania, and then off to Germany to do her, graduate work and back. And these are all African Americans, and who at that time most likely couldn't have had a job in any place other than a historically Black college because of segregation. And at any rate, Dr. Miles, one of her pursuits as a uh, plant or as a botanist in, was she was looking at um, root tip elongation and mitotic division and aspects of that with exposure to various chemicals. And so I got engaged in that. And that's when I started to learn that it wasn't just like academic science in the classroom. You got to experiment, you set up for it, you follow the rules, the methods, procedures, and what have you, and then, get your results. But, it required me, like right now, here, starting out at 2 o'clock in the morning, to uh, set that alarm clock so I could be over there at 2 o'clock in the morning if that intervening variable required to snip those root tips at a given time and smash them between a slide and a cover slip, and then look through that microscope peering to count the mitotic division, and then to the recording, and then to get involved into the analysis of the data, and then the formulation of the as you synthesized, and the tables and the charts and the graphs. And we didn't have all of the technology that you have now with regards to generating visuals and what have you. So I'm saying all that to say that that was, well, around the world around me was segregated, and it someday I was going to have to deal with the reckoning of that because graduation would come. But our professors, our administrators, our grounds people, our cafeteria people, in that little segregated space, because there was nothing we could do in the town of Princess Anne other than go to the laundromat, go to the, well, the Hawk's Nest didn't come about until my senior year, I think it was, where Black owned, and you could go there and get a sub or whatever. And there was something called Somerset Grill. The other places, there were no lots of other places, but you had to go to the side door if you wanted something to eat, the side window, and order what you wanted and have them handed out to you. You could not go in there and eat and this sort of thing. So, at any rate, we were prepared to go out into the world with confidence, knowing that if a barrier wasn't thrown up in front of us, and if we got the opportunity, we had the prerequisite confidence and skills and knowing how to pursue examination of information that's thrown at you, so to say, or the problem. And so we were just saying, as Jackie Robinson, that saying about him, he never asked anybody to move the goalposts. I mean, the fence. Never asked anyone to move the fence. He just said, let me play ball, so to say. And that's how we were prepared, and they were preparing us. And so, when I went out there knocking on those doors in Washington, D.C., I went with confidence that I'm knocking on this door because I have my credentials here. Okay. I want a job. I need a job, you know. I'm interested in science. I want to be a scientist. And when I went to Philadelphia, it's the same thing. I just had better luck there. And it turned out that I I was the only in for the longest. I've only been the only black, wherever I've worked, whether it was when I was in the Army, in the company that I was in, and because it was a company made up, and I shouldn't say because, but it was a company that was made up of scientists, people from science backgrounds. Uh, Company B at Edgewood Arsenal, and so, but at any rate, I got there and I realized that yes, I had preparation. I had almost a major in chemistry, but there was still so much more to learn. But I had the foundation to have the confidence to want to now um, uh, take on the challenge of the new approach of information and manipulating that information to come up with results that were in keeping with the mission of the organization that I was part of. So it was a tremendous learning experience for me, but it was also a tremendous learning experience for me and a confidence builder in holding my own and my dignity uh, in with the people that I work with, because they came with a lot of assumptions, a lot of prejudices, a lot of just ignorance of not knowing about the other or differences and what have you. But we worked through those, and we worked through them in a way that was amicable. And I left there with a very good feeling. And when I left there to go to graduate school, I, Dr. Hurd, Mr. Hurd, was not, he was in the front office, one of the administrators, made it clear to me, if when I went out to Oklahoma, sight unseen, it was no go look at it and see if this is something you wanted to do. I talked with Brad Brown on the phone under the recommendation of Dr. Heitch and Dr. Abrams, my biology teacher and my math teacher, who met him, referred me to him, and knew that I wanted to go to grad school. But what I'm saying is, it had been made known to me at Public Industries. If you go to Oklahoma, because at that time in 1967, folks thought I needed my head examined to be going to Oklahoma. So if you go there and you decide that's not for you, you have a job here, you can return. That was really uplifting and very uh, stimulating is not just the word I'm looking from. I'm not bringing it up right now, but at any rate, it meant a lot. But then I got to Oklahoma State University, and I met I again met up with those stairs with I'm in there with folks from Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama. They were from Texas, Kansas, you name it. It was just a different breed of white folks that I were different from those that were in Philadelphia at public industry, and those that I had grown up around with, whether it was on the farm in North Carolina, our family farm, or in Annapolis, the capital city of Maryland, and having left the farm to come to back to Annapolis, where I was born, and then at the age I was then to have to learn of the invisible fence that you don't cross after a certain time, or if you cross that fence in town, you've got to know why you're there. Why are you there? You see, and so any rate, I did well. Brad was a fantastic mentor, as were others there at Oklahoma State. And then as I said, I got snatched, I got drafted. I really didn't want to go, but I was not a conscientious objector. So I ended up in the Army, did my time and what have you at Edgewood Arsenal as a research or biologist and what have you. And then from there, I came back and did graduate work towards my PhD. My research animal has always, or critter has always been an aquatic, whether it's freshwater. I then, dealt with the vicissitudes of whatever. But while there, both times I also participated in the community with the NAACP, with the Boy Scouts, because I'm a Life Scout, one merit badge from Eagle Scout. And in terms of being part of wherever I've been, I've tried to do that as well, because it's also part of my support system in a world of differences. And so I then, finished and ended up, my first job was at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, historically black college, founded before the Civil War, uh, and then spent a couple of years there as an assistant professor of biology. And while there, I went out to the University of Berkeley Livermore Labs, California, um, for a stint, and which was marvelous. I'd done freshwater, fisheries science, biology, and now I'm out here on the San Francisco Bay, Raccoon Strait between Sausalito Island and the Golden Gate Bridge, and doing work on anchovy. Um, and so that was a marvelous experience. Got work my butt off and got a publication out of that. And it turns out again that publication was extremely valuable to my applying to the federal government. I mean, I'd published from my master's work in my doctoral work, but then went out there, and it was in Fisheries Bulletin that I published in. And so what I'm saying about that, I was part of that, and I learned early on, publish or perish. You have to publish. And so that was part of, sort of the straw that helped me win out to be part of that top three and to be in a position to be able to be selected to um, uh, enter the federal government as part of the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration there in Woods Hole. And that experience, uh, the 39 years I spent there, I did spend a summer at Sandy Hook, New Jersey, as part of the Northeast Fisheries Science Center, which is a stream of laboratories from Maine at that time down to Oxford, Maryland. Maine, um, uh, there was Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, then Oxford, Maryland. And so, any rate, it was there that I pursued um, my interest in fishery science. It was and still is the place or place to be if you're in fishery science. Obviously, there are other places now that are, just as renowned, so to say, whether you're looking out in Seattle or San Diego or Miami or wherever, or Michigan State or Michigan, and so that was a different um, setting in the sense that I was now moving into upward, everything I did had or was part of being upward mobile. So it meant, I had to know how to play the game or what have you to survive, but better than to survive, to thrive. And it was there that, by then there was more of the Victrolic language of affirmative action was in the media, in the air, so to say. And so there was a lot of pushback with regards to, um, what does this thing affirmative action mean? Qualifications, are you qualified? Um, people not thinking that, I had to earn my degrees. Um, I I had to, be part, do what it took to publish those papers and what have you. Um, and so uh, it was a challenge to work alongside of individuals who were in competition with me because they wanted the next plum assignment also. And so they were, not beyond using any method or any factor that they thought would give them an edge. And so if they could use my blackness as a factor that would, help them be part of the team that, still doubted whether we belonged or I belonged, or if I was superior or inferior or whatever, I was dealing with those kinds of things. And so it required me to um, draw on whatever wisdom, understanding, experience I'd had to be able to know people in terms of uh, who were supportive and who were non-supportive, um, and so focus on those persons that could help me get where I wanted to be, as opposed to letting those who were there to create barriers for me to retard or to thwart my being successful. And so it meant I had to, like anyone else, learn negotiating and navigating skills and working with people around and across differences, across prejudices, um, and and uh, and some of it wasn't very nice either. And I contend to this day that, while I learned that uh, government science, uh, in a sense, uh, again, you do not have absolute autonomy to do the science you're interested in and to do it well, although there are individuals who did it well, and excellence was their goal, and what have you. Um, it required taking on administrative duties, responsibilities in order to advance along with the science, along with the publications, along with the production. I went in, started out as the chief of the fisheries biology investigation, which was part of the assessment division within the Northeast Fisheries Science Center. And that was sort of the creme de la creme division in some mind because they were the numbers crunchers. I was part of the numbers crunchers division. And my position there as chief of the fishery biology investigation was to manage a staff of individuals who did something called production aging and also research. And in fishery science, a fundamental and a basic indice that is required to estimate the abundance of a population of fish is the age of that fish and the growth of that or of fish. And so we were looking at techniques that could be validated and instituted that and with reliability were to determine the age of a fish, and then, of course, extrapolating to the age of a population of the various species that we work with, from Bay of Fundy, Nova Scotia to Cape Hatteras, North Carolina was our jurisdiction. And while I was there and I participated in the convention formation of the exclusive economic zone, also the EEZ, which essentially is a convention that a states or a country's territory extends 3 miles out into the ocean. And from that 3 miles to 200 miles out is the exclusive economic zone. Um, and there's a lot behind that also in terms of how that came about and why, but it had a lot to do with foreign fleets coming into a sovereign's waters and depleting the fisheries there because they might have had more advanced, larger, more of technology or vessels to do so. So you had to have a way to control that entry, but also it was toward the conservation and attending to minimizing overfishing. So, any rate, when it comes to the administration, management of a job, which if you're in academia, you're in private industry, you're in government, or non-government organizations, at some point in time, you're probably going to have, one will have to take on administrative managerial responsibilities in order to advance and be part of the decision making, the leadership level of whatever the organization or the entity that one is working with. And so I had to attend to those, and how would I continue to um, uh, advance? Because I, needed to put food on the table and pay the bills and help send my kids to college as well, and have a quality of life for recreation and enjoyment and pleasure and what have you. So those, while uh, looking at going back to policy and where we are right now, um, and looking at the fact that one of the things I did was found a intervention program called the Woods Hole Partnership Education Program, which was sponsored by the 6 scientific institutions in Woods Hole. Uh, uh, I have learned under this current regime that the program, which this would have been the 16th year, um, was terminated. And so the what we are doing now is looking at moving forward. But in doing that, um, what will it look like? And more importantly, what about all the resources, human, fiscal, money, people, that have been squandered in what we thought was moving in the right direction? And so what will policy look like under this regime? And as we go forward, how do we make sure, as much as possible, that we are part of policy? We have to be part of the policymakers. Otherwise, we will not move forward, you see. because we cannot leave it up to people who are comfortable with throwing another individual or another people on the wagon when the wagon comes by, for holding resources for themselves, holding advantage for themselves and theirs. And so we are at a time I would not have wished. I cannot imagine in my wildest imagination how we got here. And that does not mean that I'm naive, but we are at a period of time, again, you know the history. Again, we are now at a time when America has said, you do not count. You are at our beck and call, so to say. And so we have work to do, and we can do that work, and we cannot allow others to tell us how we can speak of ourselves, how we can identify ourselves, how we can identify others. And we have a moral responsibility, I think, as part of the human family, to um, speak up, speak out, and to act for the betterment of ourselves, our kind, and for humanity. And so uh, that's hopefully, as I said, there's some modicum or morsel or tacit piece of whatever I've had to say here that might be of value to someone that's listening.
All of it was of value. Hopefully you can hear me. Thank you so much. We have plenty of time if you have other things you want to share. But I wanted to make sure we are honoring your time too, because it is 3 a.m. But if you want to chat more, we can definitely do that. We have a little bit more time.
Help me, if there's something you might, think that would be worth my maybe pondering. I'm happy to do that. Um, I,
Yeah. So
yeah,
can we talk
or ask
as
questions or whatever. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So as you know, you talked a little bit about NOAA and the situation that NOAA is also in now. We have a lot of aspiring marine scientists, right, who apply to programs like, your
yeah.
program at Woods Hole, right, or at the EPP program at NOAA, or the Canals Fellowship, or all of these other programs. And we've had members who have, said, like, should I still be applying to these? What does it look like later? What will my presence be like in NOAA or some of these other federal agencies, in the future? And so what type of guidance, mentorship do you think we can offer for folks as and students as they're trying to figure out what their next step is, and helping them to not be discouraged about coming into the field right now too, because we don't want to push them away.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question and consideration. And I want to look at it this way, just freshly looking at it, and that while are we're in a situation now where there's this pushback on, and they're using DEI uh, as the shield, so to say, and and it's carrying a message that could be deflating to people's ego and everything else. Uh, and 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 but what I think, and then people who are knowledgeable, uh, is that we're in a situation right now, while all this is being thrown out here, we don't know what this means because there, whatever the foundation is for it, I don't think it has a leg to stand on for very long, you see. And so we what pipeline programs will continue is what I want to say. These major universities, small universities, state universities, whatever distinction they are, HBCUs, minority serving institutions, in order for a training component and education component to really be of value, it has to promote experiential learning. The learning cannot just be in textbooks and in a classroom or in a school laboratory setting. Right now, all this pushback on diversity, equity, and inclusion, you have thousands, millions of students that are going to get uh, internships this summer, whether it's in science, in other industries, or whatever. Most of those are going to be white folks, okay? But there are still black folks that are getting, and brown folks, and indigenous or whatever their distinction, are still getting internships. The internships that are being were contributing to the building the pool of credentialed or the credentialed talent that's going to be missing are those that somehow they can identify that had diversity, equity, or inclusion in their title some way or in their funding or whatever. But those programs like the Woods Hole Partnership Education Program that I founded, those programs were necessary and are still necessary because people tend to look for, attract, go after, spend any extra energy that they may have from doing their research or their teaching or their whatever at whatever level. They go to the lowest hanging fruit and they go to people that they know in their community and wherever they have an affinity for, their friends, to look to fill those opportunities or those positions. And by and large, when we look at, we are still only maybe 6% of PhD holders across the sciences. And then you start looking in things like the geosciences or marine or oceanography or atmospheric science, mathematics, statistics. It's even fewer and fewer people of color or non-whites, you see. And so you have these folks who are in the position to make policy, to hire, to bring in graduate students into the academy. They're not going to be going and doing what folks have had to do to identify talent out there that is not readily in their view, you see. And so we need these programs. So what I'm saying is still knock on the doors, just like I had to do. I was saying that in a reason. Under segregation, we were being educated, trained, conditioned to have confidence to go out there and knock on that door, knowing that segregation was still in force, knowing that they might not like you or might not want you to sit at the lunch counter with them or whatever, So put that aside. Build your hold on to your confidence. I'm saying to students, to early career persons, knock them on the door for a new job. For those in the job, do your work. Meet the obligations of the contract you have signed, whether it's as a student, as a faculty member, as a government employee, as a private industry employee, whatever you do it the best you can, and hold on and have tenacity, and also keep your eyes open and do your work. Intentionally have your eyes open. How is the game played? What are the rules? Are they getting ready to change the rules again? What are those changes that I need to know about so I can stay in here and I can help others come in, you see? And when they decide whatever it is under this, what, meritocracy or whatever, something to be laughed at, um, once they so-called put in whatever their RFPs are, if we're talking about response for proposals, look at that RFP, look at your credentials, look at what you want to do, use the language of that RFP, and submit your proposal. Okay. If you're looking to apply for to get into college, complete that application on time. Fulfill all of the requirements. Those of us who are in academia, in workspaces, in professions, in disciplines that are connected to these institutions, we have to now really grow that awareness and connection and familiarity. So we can reach back into these communities, these young men and women, and help them be prepared to submit that application. And we also know, looking back, what we knew 40 years ago, 50 years ago, that this preparation, if you want to go into science or any discipline, starts long before the ninth grade. So the kinds of things that BIMS is doing with swimming, it is important to nurture the children, the young children. And so we've just got to continue what we had to do in the past in stark legal segregation. These folks now aren't calling this legal segregation. They're doing something dirty and calling it clean, you see. But they still haven't articulated what this clean is supposed to look like, you see. So right now they got everybody perhaps maybe, in a stage of uncertainty and what have you. And that, I think that's part of their strategy, you see, while they get their S together. But, and whoever we're talking about. So my thing is, we have an obligation to do what we've always had to do, and that's to burn the midnight oil, run faster, longer, and you have it. And running is handing that baton to our young people and supporting our seasoned people, and what have you. And so the pipeline programs are going to continue. It was just we don't know exactly what they are. They will look like. What the criteria are for getting an opportunity. But my fear is knowing from whence we come and where we are now, we cannot rely on other people to know us or to know that we are there. We have got to make sure that we are known, and that as taxpayers, as citizens of this Republic, the United States, America is the only home I know. Okay? It is my country, and I demand to have first class citizenship. And what these people are talking about is reverting to anything but first class citizenship for certain segments of the population, you see. And so we've got to fight. We've got to, that's part of it also. We got to be part of organizing and pushing back. Um, Nothing is given to you. You have to take it. And so, you know, that's my thinking. And here again, I'm saying that at the more leadership levels, we have now, I feel, people who are already uh, in uh, in policy making, part of policy making, and connecting with the legislature and you name it. Um, that is very important. We cannot just leave this up to white folks to make policies that's good for everybody and no good for us, you see. And and um, and that's the way I see it.
Yes, totally. I want to just respond to like a few of the things you said. One is that, we need to continue supporting our aspiring students and the people who are in the field
Very.
already. We can't, just say like, oh, these programs have, been suspended, and so there's nothing else that we can do. I think that one thing that we, really prioritize at BIMS is mentorship when we have young people, we have members who are dedicated to wanting to, pursue their careers. And so, for example, we have a young lady who is a freshman in college right now, and she applied for the Woods Hole PEP program. And of course, this year we
Uh-huh.
are moving forward, right? But we were able to find her. I worked with her to find her a couple of other programs like the Virginia Sea Grant, right? They
Mm.
still had some funding.
Very.
Yeah, and like Masonville Cove, which is a wildlife preservation center in Baltimore City, they
Mm.
still had an internship opportunity. And so worked with her to teach her how to um, look in places where you may not have thought there were opportunities, but you can still use the experiences you have, right, to further your career aspirations. Because just because it doesn't say, marine science, for example, doesn't mean you can't gain skills that you can apply in your marine science job. And so just making sure that we're malleable and we know how to pivot and we know where to look for opportunities as we move forward. And so I'm really excited about the things that we do that, help our members to become more confident and to stand in their truth and to feel like, they know what's the next step to take. And if they don't, that they feel comfortable enough to say, Dr. Gerald, what should I do now? Or Simone, where should I go? What should I do? Because that's what we need. I didn't have people, that I could ask, what's for advice when I was going through the things I went through in grad school or in undergrad. And I'm sure, right, things were similar, even worse, right? For you didn't have a whole lot of colleagues or mentors, right, that can give you so much. And that's what the BIMS community is able to offer.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I like to say too is I help me recall too, is just as you did with the student that had applied to PEP, we had some 250 completed applications to consider. And it was far more applications, but those were the ones that were completed, met all of the requirements and what have you. And unfortunately, the program was terminated, and I'm very unhappy about how it was terminated, because here, the decision makers who went behind closed doors and did that uh, did not include people of color, you see. and those of us who have found the program and what have you. So that in itself is an atrocity from my point of view, and totally disrespect. And say, when I say squander 20, 30, 40 years of building a working, collaborative working relationship, and you think people are learning, that the leadership would have known better because it didn't have to end, and it didn't have to end the way it did. Um, but what I see is that over these 20 some years, um, we have built Woods Hole, for example, is not the place it was when I came in 1978 in terms of welcomingness. It still has miles to go, but it's much different, and it's much more conducive to welcomeness than it was when I got here. So what I'm saying is that there are professionals of all stripes, whites, because they're other than I think Larry, Jarita, who is it? There's one other. That's it. People, African Americans that are PhDs working in Woods Hole in 6 scientific institutes. This little village where big science goes on, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, the Marine Biological Laboratory, the Northeast Fisheries Science Center, the Woodwell Research Climate Center, the Sea Education, the U.S. Geological Survey. It's a powerhouse of resources, you see. But what I'm saying is, over these years, we have built a cadre of people who are in it for the right reason. They are researchers at these institutions, and they know the benefit, and not just know the benefit, but I think in addition to uh, whatever other way you might look at it, they have a moral compass that has allowed them to be comfortable with differences. And they see and have enjoyed the value and the pleasure of these students coming in over these 15 years. They have learned from these students. You see, these are not empty vessels coming to be filled. They are also bringing knowledge, wisdom, and opportunity with them. And that is what has happened in some of these spaces. So we do have friends, is what I'm saying, that even in this climate are looking to do what they can do to help in some way. And so some of those students, there are 4 or 5 students. There are researchers who have money in their grants or whatever, that obviously must be non-federal, whatever, that were able to pick up 4 or 5 of the students that would not have had an opportunity. And what we've been also doing is just what you are doing and you all are doing there in BIMS, and that is looking to see where else there might be people with resources that can take in these students. However, while that is happening, I am still incensed of the thousands of students that will not have a research opportunity this summer, not just because DEI has been shut down, so to say, but I say they're not having that experience because of the color of their skin, you see. And we cannot forget this. This isn't just DEI, oh, blase. If you're black, brown, they're saying don't stick around, you said, okay? Okay. And I don't want to go into other arguments about who's benefited from affirmative action and who hasn't. But right now, this is an all-out assault, war on black and brown people, okay? And but we have to hold fast. We have to make sure that we help our children, boys and girls, prepare, 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 study, 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 practice, 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 behave, 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 but enjoy and love life as much as you can. But is the old adages have to be taken care of in order to be able to take that serendipitous or that season or just methodical, thought out entrance to whatever it is you're doing. But these pipeline programs will continue. American education, any education, has to have experiential learning to undergird and fortify and support the learning and what have you, if we are to go on with being innovative, creative, and with any sort of competitive edge as a country, you see. And any talent wasted is a deficit, you see. And so we have just got to gather ourselves, so to say, and use every bit of whatever we have of influence, observation, awareness, and being on top of things to know and be part of the pulse of what's happening, not learning about it, uh, you know, weeks, months after the party's been designed, and then, oh, maybe we might find a way to invite you. Okay. That's the model of the past, you see. And that's what I'm afraid we will recapitulate into is these institutions will go for the low hanging fruit and they will be out there providing for those that they know. People in Woods Hole, everybody in Woods Hole, I don't care which institution they're at and how powerful it is. They got there because they knew somebody. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that that's real, right? Because even when we talk about when we talk about some organizations during recruitment, right? Their recruitment, right, was centered around like sending an email blast, right? And saying like, oh, well, we reached out to them, but nobody answered. And like, we know that that is not sufficient for everyone, right? There are other ways that you have to connect with people to get to know them so they trust you so that you can build relationships.
Exactly.
And if you're not
Exactly.
doing those things, right, you're not going to see those people. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up because I
Yeah.
don't want that to be what happens again, right? Where our people aren't getting the connection that they need so that they can be knowledgeable and aware of what's out there for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you mentioned like the Canals program and the Hollins program, and then there's so many more out there.
Hmm.
Well, unfortunately, those programs, and even when you looked at the REU programs, the NSF programs,
Hmm.
or if you looked at NIH program, those programs, well, they didn't have diversity and equity in their names and inclusion in their titles or whatever. They were just supposed to be meritocracy,
Yeah.
meritocracy. Uh, but when you looked, you were lucky if one person of color was in in
Right.
those 16 or 12 or however many students it was. And it's just cruel. I am of the background you need a critical mass, you see, of whatever it is you're looking at. Okay, and that was part of the defining factors of PEP. We had a critical mass of people, you see, and that is very important. And so we have to have our eyes open. Those of us who are in the academy, who are in the government, where the state, municipal, local, federal, whatever, in these NGOs, in industry, we have now got to be very, very aware of the rules, the policies, the opportunities, what's coming down the pack, what's being formulated before it even gets there, and we've got to then be connected to the communities, to the institutions that have the populations of people, concentrations of people who are underrepresented, you see. And so it's working together of knowing what is out there as far as opportunities, but you've got to know what is out there also in terms of preparation. Where is the preparation taking place? What does that preparation look like? Or is that preparation meeting the expectation of what that person hiring will be looking for, you see? And this is where I'm so livid of this so-called ending of DEI, because what it is saying, it is reducing competition. It is saying that these young men and women now who are not going to get these opportunities, that apprenticeship, they are going to be at a disadvantage when people are looking at credentials and how do you compete, you see. That's what this means. Okay, that's part of it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
This brings
and
us to a question. Yeah,
mhm.
we got a question from YouTube from someone, and they wanted to know if they aren't taking classes, but they're an early career scientist and they want to learn more about policy. How can they start to learn more about policy? What kind of steps can they take to be prepared?
Well, one, you say they're not in school or they're not. Yeah.
It
Okay.
says that they are not taking classes right now.
Right. Well, then this is where I would say then they could look into everything from go to hopefully, since it doesn't have DEI in it, even at their local level or at the federal level or at Congress, look at what those entities are, components that deal with policy. If they are academically inclined, or they're the educational policy entities. I'm trying to think of the American, something of higher education. Um, it has a policy section. If you look at the American Geophysical Union, it has a policy dimension expressed in different ways. So your local government has a policy sector to it. So in other words, you just have to search and see if you can then find policy. Okay, where is it taking place? Is there something online you can do? Is there a self study or whatever, or just go out there and do some research? And knowing policy, like everything else, has many dimensions, varieties to it. It varies depending on whether you're looking at agriculture policy, education policy, marine science policy, marine shipping policy. Uh, you name it. And that's something I didn't mention in far as I'm concerned, looking ahead for those of us in BIMS is, um, I'm sure it's already to some degree being pursued, but a major component of marine endeavor, sector, is shipping, and everything from handling small vessels to huge cargo ships or cruise ships or whatever. So that I was on the board of trustees at the Massachusetts Maritime Academy, and I that was quite an education for me, and awareness also was the uh, the industry, the maritime industry, which has everything basic science components to it, basic marine science or oceanography, or what have you, engineering, physics, uh, every possible dimension or discipline of science that you can think of is required there. And people who pilot these vessels up and down the Mississippi River or the various inland waterways or the lakes or the ponds to one of the most intense highways is out there on the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean or any ocean, connecting nations via shipping and what have you. So, there's that's a dimension that we could pay more attention to. And I forget how many maritime academies there are in the United States. And those are just the ones that are either state or federal supported. But then you have the private maritime schools as well that prepares one or there for one to get build skills and preparation to work in the maritime industry.
Yeah, we have our BIMS immersion program coming up, and part of the BIMS immersion program is that participants are able to get scuba certified. And a couple of the people who applied actually talked about wanting to do like maritime archaeology. And so I'm starting to see more like work around like maritime, either being on the ships or doing research around the history, right? So the archaeology component, we're seeing that more and more often. So maybe, right, that shipping piece is starting to become a little bit more like prevalent in folks' career aspirations. But Dr. Jerald, we have one more question for you
Okay.
from the chat, and it was the last one. How can we activate our institutions, could be your school or lab, et cetera, to stand up for us?
Um, I think that it's a two-way street. Um, there has to be push from, there has to be external or extramural push a lot of times for institutions to do the right thing, to uh, stand up, to push back, um, and and so it can only come from without, because institutions have to know, I think, that they are supported and that somebody has their back also, you see. And they have to consider, where the funding and what comes from. But also, I think they need to look into what are the laws? What what is the legal foundation of your institution? You're in business, so what are the laws behind your being, in operation, so to say? And look at those, and look at how you challenge ever how small or big it is in your pushback for what it is that you believe in and to meet your mission. Um, and so I think it takes um, people from outside to agitate, to make their concerns known in a respectful way. We can debate, we can, argue, but in a respectful way, if it comes to that. My thing is I don't have the answer. There's no silver bullet as far as I'm concerned. It's gonna, get everything. But the point is, I believe it's a two-way endeavor. Is what's going on inside the institution, looking at who we are, how we operate, how we are a legal entity and what the laws are that we are meeting, the statutes to maintain, and then whatever is being denied or saying we can't do or you won't do anymore, where can you see you can push back on that, you see? And so yeah, yeah, and because when you and I don't know what institutions or what entities this person is asking, where they're talking about academic institutions or private industry or non-government organizations or whatever. If you're looking at academia, you have to look at what we are now realizing in many ways, whether you are state or whether you are private. You know, if you state, you've got statutes that govern you, your existence, and if you're private, you have statutes that govern your existence. I mean, look at what's looking at Harvard. People looking, and hoping that Harvard will not only look out for Harvard, but be a magnet and a leader and a galvanizer for higher education, since it's the capstone of American education. Now I have issues with Harvard, in the sense of I do not like how our sister was treated there. I think it was despicable. I think with all those billions of dollars, they could have stood up for some principles and what have you. But that's another, I don't want, I'm not there and I don't want to meddle too much in that. But I'm just saying, as somebody out here in the atmosphere or in the environment or in the world, it just the optics are not good, and they don't look good for people who look like us, you see. Yeah,
If it's
yeah.
one thing Dr. Gerald gonna do, he gonna tell the truth, and we appreciate you. On let's end on a high moment. What is the best moment of your career? That's what someone
Oh,
has asked. Yes,
oh
can you tell
Lord, the
us
best
something about the
moment of my
best one?
career. Oh, my career. So that means after the studying and or at least having to earn degrees. Well, I would not take away my time with NOAA for nothing. NOAA. I've loved my job. I've worked with some of the best people in the world at NOAA, in spite of, or maybe because of, the challenges and what have you. But I think one of the things about that employment, that job, career, um, that was exciting, beneficial, was the opportunity to travel, to do my science, to broaden my purview, so to say. Uh, in there's a friend I have in uh, from Benin in Paris, Justin Ahanzo, who with IOC, UNESCO, retired from there, um, and and so meeting him and being a colleague, and he was just here recently in the States. Um, I got to appreciate, have a better appreciation for Pan Africanism uh, by our association in looking at the global community with regards to participation in the marine and ocean sciences. And we end up with the something called Paxicon, looking at Pan Africanism and in up in Mozambique together, and then Abidjan. And then one of my highlights too was being part of the U.S. Binational Commission, um, the U.S. South African Binational Commission, which came into being just the year post apartheid, of getting being seconded to South Africa to work for over some almost 5 years, for long stretches of time to work with, starting out with what was our counterpart, say, as a civil servant, National Marine Fisheries Service. I worked with Sea Fisheries in South Africa, and then as they went through the transformation from the old government to the new government, it became the Department of Environment and Tourism. And so that was a very rewarding um, experience for me. And it is a highlight of my career, is the time that I spent with that, and also with, oh, I think I've ended, but that's it.
You seem like you were trying to
Oh,
decide,
oh,
like,
oh,
oh,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. I thought it had ended. So, so that was a highlight, and also associated with my work in West Africa. I got to be part of the large marine ecosystems team that did, we were working in Cote d'Ivoire, in Nigeria, in Ghana, Cameroon, and so for me, you know, African American, Black American, colored, whatever, um, that was a highlight of my career. I think so it's up there. Yeah, my opportunity to uh, work on the continent there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that was a powerful experience. You seems like you were trying to decide between or like what to choose within your career, and
Oh
then
yeah, it is. Yeah. After, 40 years, that's,
yeah,
it's pretty hard to do, because there were some really high moments there. And I think of the time that, I spent working with the, oh my goodness, it's right on the tip of my tongue, uh, lab at MIT. We Jack Swamala is who I'm thinking, but I'm drawing a name on he was the PI there, uh, but and head of it. But at any rate, the work we did in Norway, and when I say to travel, it was meaningful travel, professionally meaningful for me, scientifically meaningful. My focus, concentration for my doctoral work was uh, from the biological basis of behavior, the evolutionary approach to behavior. Ethology is what I concentrated on, study of animal behavior. So I fortunately, again, got an opportunity to go spend time working with physicists, engineers, acoustics people, biologists, and behaviorists in Norway. So that was a highlight. I mean, so it's a number of experiences that I think, and then the work that Dr. Chigbu and Food and I did down for a number of years at Jackson State University in Mississippi there, an HBCU, um, essentially teaching a course in stock assessment, fisheries population dynamics. Uh, but it was working with some 15 to 17 students, um, and for X number of weeks each summer. And so that those kinds of things compete with what is my favorite, so to say.
yeah, it seems nearly impossible to choose, I'm sure. And my career is much shorter than yours, and I feel like there's a lot of memorable, times that I've had. And I think that that's something that we all love about marine science, right? It's like there are so many different things you can do, right? And um,
There is.
no day is the same, you
There
know,
are.
and you could have some
Yeah,
amazing experiences that you will never forget, even when it's hard, right? Like even when it's tough, even when the research is, you know, you have long days, or you've been in the lab all night, or you've been in the boat all day, and you haven't been able to, you know, like meet the goals that you wanted to have, whatever it is, you still feel really just like excited whenever you are doing the work. And it's like what Dr. Moore said at the beginning, Dr. T said at the very beginning of this, you know, the experience that she had as a young person on a trip. Where she like started to do some water quality testing, and the watercolor change, something that simple made her feel like this has to be what I do the rest of my life, right?
yeah,
Like this is
yeah,
something that I love so much. And that's how it is every time for us, right? You know,
exactly.
it just sinks in. We're like, oh, I love this and I'm never going to stop doing this. And so I appreciate you sharing your experiences with us.
Yeah, and it's you hit it, and just and the people, it's just the people that you work with of all dimensions and personalities and interests, and so it's been wonderful. And that's part of being a scientist. And as you say, part of science can almost seem like loneliness sometimes because you got to be in that lab sometime alone, or aloneness at least. And, while others might be out, finger popping and whatever, you got to burn the midnight oil. You got to be in that lab. You got to be out there in that field. You got to get that data. And that, we cannot emphasize enough in terms of as we move, policy is extremely important. But to be that research scientist that we aspire to be is keenly important, and that's where we need people to keep stick have that stick to itiveness, to wherever you got that spark, looking at the TV or online, or visiting an aquarium, or visiting whatever, or going rock climbing. uh, Hang on to it, and that curiosity, um, hold on to it, but realize that it has to be bridled.
Did I lose Dr. Gerald, or is it me that is messed up? Jasmine, can you hear Dr. Gerald?
No, I think he's frozen.
Would you say, Jasmine?
I think he may be frozen, may have
Uh,
lost Dr.
okay, he's frozen on my end too. I want to make sure it wasn't me that was messed up.
No,
Okay, Dr. Gerald is maybe frozen, likely frozen. But that was amazing having him, and I appreciate him for sticking with us for an extra hour. That was awesome. And that's like, again, the power of, just someone who has been in the field so long. They have so much to share, right? He can never run out of stories to tell us. We've talked to him, and we've known him for so long, and still we hear new things all the time. And every time I'm like completely engrossed in what he's saying. So I'm really glad that it was him that got to talk another 2 hours. Huge fan. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. T. But I hope that y'all had a good time riding with me for 4 hours, and that y'all enjoyed the kickoff to the BIMS Currents of Change. And we got the rest of the day and night to go. So keep it moving. Sign in with us all day. And we appreciate y'all. Don't forget to donate. Love y'all. Bye-bye.
Simone is trying to get out 7 minutes early. That's it. That's
You
right.
know what's crazy though? Like literally, as soon as I said that, Emery just started crying. So like, it's
She said
actually
it's time
perfect
for
for
me
me.
to, it's time. It is time though. Thank you so much, Simone. Shout out to our amazing moderator and chief learning officer for the first 4 hours. It is now time for me to pull up, change the moderation. I also want to shout out Jasmine, who is holding it down on our tech team. So yes, we have a whole situation going on back here, as you may have guessed. So we should have our tech switch out coming on soon. Hopefully we don't have any problems in the interim. But did we stop Ambrose's recording and start the next one?